Hi, guys. Welcome back to Changing Minds, Changing Lives. My name is Julie Sowash. I'm the CEO of Catch 22 Group and the strategic advisor for Disability Solutions. We are wrapping up kind of the first year that I've stepped away from the executive director role. The team has been so gracious to keep me on doing podcasts, doing some advising, and still being able to interact and do the work that I love while I kind of start my own adventures. So it's been a really hard year for all of us. For me, it's been an incredible year, and so much of that is related to our guests today and the conversation we're going to have today. So I'm very excited about that. Before we get started, or before I bring my guest on, even though he can see me right here, I do want to call out two things. I want to say a huge thanks to Tara Turk Haynes for the incredible conversation we had last month around the SHRM blueprint, the Robbie Starbuck, excuse me, and Van Jones interview. We've had such great feedback, and we're learning more and more about some things that the SHRM organization is doing now in court. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that in 2026 and hope to have Tara back to talk about that. But she really gave some incredible insight and has spurred so much conversation through our conversation. So thanks, Tara, for that. And I also want to say that our director of marketing for Disability Solutions has started the Disability Tea, which I freaking love. Which it's a 15-20 minute conversation overview that I think is coming out, or is goal to come out every week. The first one is out. It's getting amazing reception. I'm so proud of Ashley for getting her voice out there and really kind of taking that step out. I know how hard that was for me, even though I crave and love attention. I know how hard it is to kind of put your voice out there, to put your face out there. She's doing amazing work for not just Disability Solutions, but for the disability community. Super snackable, easy to take in, fun, easy conversations. Definitely check it out on our YouTube page. We'll put the link in the show notes. You can subscribe there so you get those. But she's also putting them on LinkedIn. So if you don't subscribe, but please do subscribe, you can also catch them there if you're following Disability Solutions on LinkedIn. So, to the point, I have the pleasure today of bringing on my final guest on Changing Minds and Changing Lives in 2025, who I call my lifelong Zen master, the man who brings me calm, even when I'm not in the executive director role, when I need it. My right hand man when I was at Disability Solutions, and now for almost a year, executive director of Disability Solutions, Keith Meadows. So, Keith, welcome to Changing Minds, Changing Lives. Your first, but maybe not your last time visiting us here.
Thank you. It's great to be here in the hot seat. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yes. I'm quite the hot seat interviewer. I hear that about myself all the time. So a little bit about Keith. So we have known each other. We've known each other for a long time, but I would say we met probably almost 20 years ago. Is that fair? Maybe 17,
Maybe
18
more.
years ago.
Maybe more. I don't know.
A long time ago, which seems so wild to me. And we were out at a Colts game and just having a conversation, doing our, kind of social things. And my sister-in-law, who is somewhat brilliant from time to time, said, who would be great on your team? Keith. And I was like, I know that, but I never thought about it in terms of like, he's got a gig, he's good, he's doing what he's doing. And then that conversation quickly blossomed into, this guy has got to be a part of Disability Solutions. He is the yin to my yang in terms of I am really all over the place, kind of have a hard time focusing, loud, emotional. This guy is the steady ship that is going to and is already carrying Disability Solutions into the future. And I can say, as I planned For almost a full year before I left Disability Solutions, there was absolutely no other person that I would ever have put what really has been such a huge part of my life, my baby, kind of my whole identity, honestly, for a long time in Disability Solutions and what we built together there, other than Keith. So I'm so excited. He is a little quiet, but I'm excited to have him on the show and to let you guys kind of hear him talk and speak. Been doing amazing things on LinkedIn. Definitely follow him there. That content is getting a lot of action. But right now you get to kind of hear his voice. So, Keith, tell us from your perspective, not the bad stuff about me, but all the other stuff, your perspective and your kind of history coming into Disability Solutions, now into client leadership, and now into the full time role leading the team.
Sure. So I've been with the company for about 10 years now, and really started off with working with our number one client at the time, Pepsi, our only client, and really centered on helping them hire people with disabilities. And that's kind of the genesis of where Disability Solutions began. And kind of took on additional duties, managed clients, and kind of focused on optimization and like how do we take the client experience and make it as seamless and positive and results oriented as possible. And so we've been able to grow the number of employers that we have worked with. I came from a restaurant management background, so I was very familiar with kind of the customer service experience, right? You want to treat your customer like gold, make sure that they get what they want out of the relationship. And here, we want to make sure that they have outcomes. They want to move the needle forward with disability hiring. They want to hire folks with disabilities. They want to get their leaders, hiring managers, recruiters, some excellent training to kind of cut through some of the fears and stigmas that are still out there about disability. And so that's really what I kind of cut my teeth on here. And so with this new role that I'm in here for the last year or so, it's really been a privilege to lead a team of motivated and like incredibly passionate people towards a really worthy and worthwhile goal, which is increasing disability employment, helping employers, by changing minds and lives. And so changing their minds, and then we get to change the lives of job seekers with disabilities when they get hired. So it's been a really interesting experience and really, I would say valuable experience for me personally, kind of seeing that in action. And I'm excited where the future is going. We've got some things to work through on the economic situation right now, but I do think that there are brighter skies in 2026.
Yeah. And, I think one, there's so many plugs that I could do just from the 2 minutes of talking that you just did. And I think one, my favorite one, because I also, if you all don't know this, I also came from a restaurant background before I went into affirmative action and government stuff. And if I ever get a chance to hire someone who has a restaurant background, like it is almost a no-brainer. And I feel like that group of individuals like never gets a fair shot when they start to move into the corporate professional world. Did you find kind of the same experience when you were doing hiring?
Yeah, I thought restaurant experience for me was kind of like a free MBA because I
Yes.
essentially was a general manager. I ran, staffing. I ran P&L responsibility. You have your hand in every single cookie jar to kind of make the enterprise run, and it's all coming at you at like 150 miles an hour. And so you have to very quickly learn to prioritize what is important, what is noise, and sift through that and kind of take action sometimes in the moment. And I think that lends really well to a lot of different industries, especially ones that involve critical thinking and deciphering what is most important to act on and what is not, but then also thinking like you can't just live in the moment and just be reactionary, right? So you have to, structure your day, structure your weeks, your months, so that the big picture is in mind, and then you're taking these micro steps and going the direction that you need to. And I think, the restaurant world did that for me. It was not an easy job, as managing restaurants, with, you'd have call offs, you'd have, various, sporting events that happen and you'd be surprised, right? Occasionally. So it wasn't always like, the sunshine and rainbows, right? But what I did glean from it after my years of experience there is that it provided me with one of the best educations in business, like, that I could possibly imagine. I've been able to kind of take that experience and apply that here, and streamline operations, focus on efficiencies, make sure our customers are well taken care of and valued. And how do we take this business to the next level? How do we grow it? How do we get into areas of the disability world that we haven't been in before? And so those types of conversations are very interesting to me and intriguing. And my restaurant background really helped kind of propel me to that. And I think you probably had a similar experience.
Yeah, and I think, one, there was almost no sunshine and roses days in restaurant management, I just have to say, at least from my recollection.
There were some. There
Um,
were some.
but, you even on top of that took restaurants that were failing and turned them around. And so when you talk about, it literally, my experience was an MBA, yours was like an MBA plus. You had to turn around a P&L that was failing. You had to make very hard staffing decisions that impacted the whole team. So you were HR, you were TA, you were the CEO, you were the COO. You had to keep track of scheduling, inventory, everything else. And I remember, like, the first time I interviewed, and this was actually for the state of Indiana, and I'd come from my current job as I finished university was a restaurant manager. And the lady who became my boss, who's lovely, her face when I told her, "You don't understand all of the hats that I wore. This is what I did." At first, her face was like, "Girl, no, you didn't do anything. This is like a low level job that doesn't count." And I'm like, "Here are all the things that I did. And here's why all of those things mattered." And at the end of the day, like you in your position now as executive director, the buck stopped with you. You're fully responsible for the business. And I think sometimes, like, as we transition into right where I'm thinking about is like all of the work that you've done with job seekers, a lot of times people with disabilities who are either, entry level or they're moving into that kind of first professional role, maybe even just job seekers in general, have a hard time telling an employer how the skills they have now or that they had in that role transition into the role that they're hiring for. And you've done so much job seeker prep. You've done so much work with job seekers themselves, like one-on-one training, interview skills, class-based stuff, so much that we've been able to move to our LMS now. Kind of give me your take on how we built that portion and some of the things that you've seen over the years from job seekers that would be good information for TA leaders or HR leaders to keep in mind as they're thinking about hiring, or even some things that job seekers should always do.
Yeah, I would say one thing, is with kind of a restaurant background, there are synergies between things that a person with a disability could potentially go through, right? Which is like immediate dismissal. So if people see a restaurant background, maybe it's just an immediate dismissal. We're not going to consider that person because of these types of jobs. And there's a variety of different, positions and industries that would fit that bill. And, for people with disabilities, that's kind of what we feel a lot of times on a daily basis if we're applying for jobs and we've got a visual disability and we're on a Zoom call and we didn't get the job, right? And so there are tangible connections there. But from a job seeker perspective, a lot of times it's just having the conversation of what is your previous history, what jobs did you do. There's a tendency by job seekers to just kind of boilerplate into one statement what they did for 7 or 8 years. And so what we really encourage is kind of think about all of the hats that you wore as you described, like what were those specific hats, jot them down, jot some of those duties. So like know your own story better than anyone else, because you're actually the one that's needs to tell that story to the employer. And if it contains, if you did, let's say it's customer service for 10 years, and you just say that, oh, I did customer service for 10 years, you need to add a little bit more flavor. What did you do within that time frame? And I think that's where a lot of people, oh, I just did this position, or I just did that position. But you really need to, if you're going for a role, understand what the role is, what they're looking for, and kind of match those key attributes from your prior work history that you've done, and then make sure that you're able to tell your own story. And I think that that's something that we've seen as a constant struggle. With our learning management system, our team does a lot of trainings for both job seekers, for both employers, hiring managers, recruiters. And we would get constant requests for kind of live versions, and it got to the point where we couldn't do that amount of live versions. So we began investigating, how could we get this online, and potentially have this content available so that employers could access it whenever they wanted, kind of as part of a package or a tier. And that's why within our platform, we've got 10 different trainings for employers. And so they, cover mental health awareness, dispelling fear and stigma about disability, which is essentially disability 101, what to say, what not to say, those types of things. We also have one for accommodations, creating a successful talent network if you want to engage with the disability community, how to do that, and what are some of the common mistakes and learning objectives there. Also, ableism 101. That's a fresh topic here in recent years, where we cover that and kind of go through some tips and best practices. Really, with all our trainings, what we try to do is take something that is either complex or mysterious and really distill it down to its essence and leave you with some tangible takeaways, so that you can leave that session and you can go out and you can implement 1, 2, or 3 specific things and make the world a better place. And so our employers have really taken to that. It came out of that we couldn't do so many Zoom trainings live. So we ended up going with a learning management system. It's been incredibly powerful, allows our corporate partners to have their team members review that whenever they want, because not always is it convenient for everybody to show up at a webinar to kind of talk about disability at noon on a Friday, right? But they can certainly take that on their own time. We try to make them fun, engaging, and there's little quizzes and things of that nature. So it's definitely enhanced our business, and it's also allowed us to have a larger suite of courses. And so we've been blessed to stumble across that and get our trainings on that too. So it's been great.
Yeah, and I think you make such a great point. When we first started Disability Solutions, it was primarily a consulting company. And if you have never been in consulting, I highly do not recommend. And it takes a long time to sell. It takes a long time to implement, and you're very much dependent on the client giving you what you need and being responsive. And there are just so many variables in consulting, that really what we had to do when we started thinking about what does a solution set look like long term, that, and you said it, that employers are comfortable with, right? Where they can go in and they can ask whatever question they need to. They can get the information on demand. They can, advertise their jobs. They can, go to events. Those kind of things that TA and HR people are already comfortable with. How do we build something that resembles that, but actually helps people with disabilities get to work? And I think that you were so critical in helping us move our product set to a place that you call it optimize, I call it scale. Same thing, but I'm like, when I came into this industry and we started really talking, it was, you have to touch every job seeker. You have to know every single thing about every person. You have to do every training live. We have to deep dive every ATS, and those are fun things. They're things I think a lot of times our team really enjoyed doing. But because we were scrappy and young, and we're a nonprofit, we really had to think, how do we scale and optimize and take two things that are hard? One is hiring people for your business, and then two is doing it in a community that you're not a part of, and that a lot of times your employer has taught you to be fearful of, or your life has taught you to be fearful of, or to pity. And, what you helped us do is take that product set, that potential product set, and build it into something that can outlast both of us. And that, I think, is so much the point of what we built at Disability Solutions. And it was something that, I'm going to use the word safe. I don't know if it's the word I love, but was safe for people who were interested in learning about the community and engaging in the community to engage with us.
Yeah, and I think that, just from my experience with kind of, TA and like being a hiring manager and putting that hat on when we were kind of creating these, the jobs they have are difficult, right? Like they're juggling a lot of things. How do we make our product as easy as possible and operate in the background and operate at their convenience? And I think that's one of the nice synergies is just kind of understanding your customer, realizing how busy they are, realizing this is important to them and they can't devote a great deal of their time to kind of managing it, but they can do things, with the solutions that we have and kind of operate in the background, and they can take a training, on their own time. And so it just allows them flexibility to be able to dive deeper into the disability space, which a lot of people want to get into. But they also think that it's incredibly time intensive and it's going to, they're going to need to devote a great deal of their day to kind of managing and going through. But in actuality, with, our career center option, it kind of operates in the background for you. We've got outreach going to community organizations to kind of advertise your job posts. With our training, your team can take that on their time. It doesn't have to be a set time and place. And so it just allows you to weave disability into your business in a way that kind of meets you where you're at. And so it's worked quite well. And I think that it's just a really good approach for any business, is understanding your customer and finding ways to solve for their problems and help them get to where they need to be or where they want to be, especially in the disability space. And that's what we look to do here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's kind of fast forward to today, where we are. I really appreciate you indulging me in sort of all the historical chit chat. I feel like there are only a couple of us at Disability Solutions, or that we're a part of Disability Solutions, can understand the way that we had to shift our mindset from fear and pity, even for communities that we're a part of, into like, we're building a business that needs to be sustainable, it needs to be scalable, and it needs to have measurable impact. And really, if I think of where we are today, the thing that I'm proud of is that we have results that we know happened because we put tracking in place, because we put training in place, because we went and built a system that worked with the system that the employers already have. Now, today, right? I think if you've been on Changing Minds, Changing Lives this year, if you've joined some of the quarterly webinars that I do that we're going to continue into 2026, I think you can see from me that it's been a hard year. And as we kind of wrap up the end of the year, and as I promised Ashley, we would think about some positive things going into next year. What are some of the things that you feel like, positive or negative, doesn't matter, for 2025? Sorry, Ashley. Have been most impactful, I would say, you could say, to our business, or to the broader disability job seeker community, that really have been your focus?
Yeah, I think twofold. So, economically, I think businesses are in a situation where they're pausing decisions, and everybody's in kind of a wait and see if we're having an economic like monsoon and tornado, or if they're just kind of storm clouds. And so I think that that's kind of what 2025 for the most part has been. I do see, and from conversations with employers, I do see 2026 being a little bit more fruitful from businesses being actionable. Because if you have the money and you want to spend it, but you're just kind of holding, there's only a certain amount of time that you're going to do that, right? And then you're going to end up spending and doing things. So I do think that 2026 brings brighter clouds from a job seeker perspective. If you are a highly credentialed person, I think that you probably got a decent market. I think what we've run into is a lot of entry level roles, are starting to be taken by AI, and the competition for entry level roles are including recent college graduates. They're highly skilled people who have maybe 5-10 years of experience in the industry. So the competition for entry level roles is super intense at this moment. um, but I think that it's the job seeker market is liable to turn just as quickly one way or another. We've seen it go both ways, right? It wasn't just a couple of years ago where job seekers kind of had the power, right?
Yep.
They could choose their employer, and now we've swung the pendulum the other way, where employers do have the power at this moment in time. And I think that there is, everything is kind of AI and it's the buzzword, and I do think it will radically change our world. But I think that from a caution standpoint, from an employer standpoint, you want to make sure that if you're diving deep into AI can be incredibly discriminatory, and like you're intentionally kind of taking people out of the process and kind of letting the machines do the work. Now the machines may do the work well, they may not, but I think what a lot of companies are going to find is they'll jump too deep into the AI pool too quickly, and then they're going to need to kind of backtrack and rework themselves to find some sort of happy medium. And I do think AI is going to be woven into what everybody does, but I think there is a fear, or there's danger in kind of jumping on it too deep into the pool, and then trying to rework your process. Because for people with disabilities, we've been discriminated against for quite some time, right? And we all know that systems, we have companies that want to hire people with disabilities, and then you know this as well as anyone, we find that the systems are preventing them from doing so. And so if an ATS, or if your process itself is unintentionally kind of knocking out a certain subset of the population, um, what is AI going to do, right? How is that model trained? How do you know what's in it, right? And so those are the fears that you mentioned, brought up morning disability earlier, which is our micro podcast. We just had a great episode on that, that our marketing director Ashley put together, where she kind of covers that topic too. So I encourage you to check that one out. But I do think 2026 brings a little bit more sunshine than rain. But as always, you don't really know. So the economic clouds may linger, but they've also lingered for quite some time. And there are companies that are doing quite well, that are just kind of holding the cards close to the vest, and they'll only hold those cards for so long. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we had some, at least from a hiring perspective, some good news yesterday, that we had a final end of the year interest rate cut from the Fed. We're anticipating what I think two more in 2026. As of now, with still a fairly robust economy at this point, right? There are kind of some things that are, I would say, are a bit of the trifecta that we're still pushing against. But overall, we have a relatively healthy economy. And to your point, companies have been holding spend. They've been holding money on hiring. We're seeing AI and workforce automation disrupting some of the holiday hiring, that kind of thing. But, really at the end of the day, if I'm thinking about, where am I in 2026? What are the things that I think, to your point, that we can pull on? Um, you and I are both lovers of the stock market too, and I relate the job market very much, or the housing market, back over to how we look at the market. The market, the job market, whatever it is cyclical. There are going to be times where it's employer leaning, employer advantageous. There are going to be times like just after the pandemic when every company was flush with cash and needed workers, that it was advantageous to job seekers. You and I have been through this as kind of adult workers at least twice. So I think that's the thing I kind of always lean on is like, we're going to go through ups and downs. This is part of the cycle. And just understand that that cycle is going to be constantly cycling. It's not going to stay one way forever. And in the long run, there's good and bad to that, but not losing our focus in the immediate, and planning long term, I think is critical. Um, I think also one thing I'm seeing in terms of trends that's great for our community is that the remote work job listings have kind of stabilized. Those positions, like, they were falling kind of dramatically as companies pulled people back to the office. But if working remote is a critical need for your quality of life, for your accommodation, we're seeing those positions stabilize over the last 6 months, and we don't anticipate a big downturn. So those positions are not going to disappear. They're competitive, absolutely, but there is opportunity. Um, I also think that, you know, we know who you are now, right? So after the murder of George Floyd, and we had so much focus on DEI, and now the pendulum has swung the other way, which again is how we tend to do it in America. We go far left, we go far right, we meet somewhere happy in the middle, and we've made progress. Um, I think clearly as a community, we know who you are company wise, right? If you started taking your videos down, if you cut your programs, if you did all of these things because you were reacting to an administration, or you realize, oh, I don't have to spend this money anymore, then we see you, right? And there's no, in my opinion, it's going to take a long time for the companies that were PR only or compliance only focused to earn the trust back of, outside of women, the largest demographic community in this country, and probably the largest demographic community outside of women in the world. So the companies that are sticking with it, the companies that even maybe they're not screaming it from the rooftops, but are still advertising, that are still working to make their applicant tracking system and their hiring process accessible, like, we know who you are and we know who you aren't. And that's huge. I think that we need, as a community, that moment of clarity, and of reality. So I think that while it hurts, is positive. And we'll be continuing to watch those companies in 2026, and who, even if they're doing it quietly, is still doing the work. And I think really, I would love to talk about AI all day, but we're at like the 35-minute mark, and I promised you 20 minutes now. But I think the last thing is, it's somewhat easy to feel like, with the changes around affirmative action and 503, that kind of all is lost. Um, but it's not. We've taken a step back, yes, but we have accomplished so much in the last decade that people in charge, people in hiring rooms, they understand our value in a way that's completely different than before Section 503 changed, before it became cool and hip to hire people who are different than white people, white men. And so I think that we have to kind of look at, like, these things still exist. These people are still out there doing the work. We're going to go through cycles, and accepting that economically is critical. And the rules around accommodations, the rules around the ADA is still the law of the land, and that's not going away. So if you need an accommodation, if you need protection under the ADA, right, that's not going to change. And companies are still required to do that. So is it perfect? No. But are there things that I can think of that are the silver lining? Yes. And I think the reality is we just have to buckle down and continue to do the work. And that's always been our mantra at Disability Solutions. We don't have to be the coolest kids on the block. We don't have to be the most, marketing savvy, amazing kind of content creators. We're getting there. But we did the work. And the work that we've done for the last, 15 years together is what's actually going to continue to carry the story, because we focused on things that weren't just pretty. They were actually getting people to work at scale.
Yeah, and it's not all doom and gloom. I do foresee that, just like our previous discussion, it's a pendulum. It swings one way, it swings another. Where it ends up, is somewhere in between the 2 points, right?
Yep.
But I do think it's important to highlight that this could be a really big point of competitive advantage for companies. If we kind of take out the laws themselves, like, people with disabilities tend to stay on the job longer. You spend less money recruiting with turnover and everything else. Why is that, you might ask? We've faced discrimination in a lot of different aspects. And so if someone gives us a chance, we are likely to stay with the person that gave us the chance, right? And so being able to kind of build a business model that incorporates people with disabilities into your business is smart, and we've got the numbers to kind of back that up, and there are companies currently doing that. So in my opinion, 2026, 2027 becomes a who's doing it and who's not, and the who's doing it will reap the benefits from getting great employees who stick around for long periods of time, and those who aren't are going to find themselves at a disadvantage. And if your direct competitor is very, very close to you as far as gross sales and like market share, this could be something that dramatically swings the odds to your favor. 1 in 4 people here in the US have some type of disability. Not only are they potential employees, but like, we buy your products. And
Yes.
so you can kind of see from some of the big companies in the news how that has worked favorably and unfavorably if we choose to kind of withhold dollars. And so those are things to seriously consider, regardless of kind of everything legislatively that's going through. Not only you could have great employees who stay on the job longer, save yourself money that way, you could get the disability community buying your products and supporting you. As a business background person, that speaks to me, and I think that it's going to speak to a lot of employers too.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And it always makes me laugh because we've been saying this anecdotally for, at least myself, going on 20 years. Um, what's different now about everything you just said is that it was 100% true then, it's 100% true now, but we've had this decade of actually proving it, right? We, Disability Solutions, have hard numbers. Organizations that track consumer spending have hard numbers. Like, it's not something that we just throw out there because somebody said it to us a long time ago. It is actually a reality, and all of the progress that we as a community have made, since 503 changed, and since, diversity became such a popular focus in our country, tells the story in a way that is much more legitimized, and data tracked than what it was when we started in this world. And I think that's the thing to hold on to, and is a good way to call it a day. So are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with for 2025, wrapping up your first year as executive director? Anything like that?
Happy New Year, everybody.
Always the man who's quiet. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I love talking to you, and I know we do it all the time, but I was very nervous about doing it on camera because I have no idea why. It's always easy. You're the Zen master. So, if you aren't following Disability Solutions, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Anywhere else?
Everywhere.
All right, changingminds.changing lives.com, disabilitytalent.org. Reach out to Keith. He is the man. Our team is incredible. I'm so blessed to continue to have this person and all of the team in my life, and to be able to not give up when it gets hard, but to continue this fight into 2026 with you all. So until next year, have a great one and keep changing minds and changing lives.